Welcome everybody to The Void. There's nothing in here, only you, me, a piece of blind and an air purifier. Does it sound great in here? I have never actually spoken in this room. This is my hobby room. This is like my little art room that I sit in and I paint things all the time. This is where I use like my airbrush. You hear it? Oh, and there goes the compressor. This is where I sit and do everything. I don't even know if you could hear that. I wanted to make a video talking about my updated paint jobs because I've been painting a lot and I think I've gotten a lot better. I did a video on this channel a while back talking about all the things I painted, and it was like my year's experience of painting, and I was really proud of the progress I had made on all the models that I painted. And I started painting Warhammer stuff, and since then things have gotten bigger and bigger, and I've learned new techniques, and I've started using an airbrush and all these different things. The camera is literally sitting in like the little airbrush booth that I have. So you guys are literally a painting model right now. Congratulations, you're about to get covered in toxic filth. Something horrible happened to all my models since the last time as well. I had them all sitting on a nice shelf. You can see where this is going already. In a room downstairs where I originally had held all of my hobby stuff. And when I was away in LA, Evelyn sent me a thing saying, oh, I heard a bang, but I don't know where it came from. And in that room, the shelf fell down and broke a lot of my models that I had worked on. Thankfully, a lot of them were saved, a lot of them were fixed because they were 3D printed resin, which if it cracks, usually cracks really cleanly. It's really easy to break, but it also means that it snaps instead of just like crumbling into 1,000 pieces. So I was able to glue a lot of them back together and you can't really tell that they were broken. Some of them, like my Warhammer ones that are plastic, broke and they are a bit uglier. But some of the ones that broke and were unsalvageable, I was kind of hoping to throw away anyway because I wasn't really happy with them anymore. But anyway, the reason we're here is for the things that I am working on. Since the last time, of course, I couldn't help myself. I worked on another Guts model because I love Guts so much. I love Berserk so much. It's one of the reasons I even got into any of the stuff that I'm into. I think this one turned out a lot better than the last one. If you saw in the other video, the one that I had with the big like Beast of Darkness dog coming around the side, that smashed into a million bits and I had to throw it out. But I'm not too upset by it because I think this one's nicer and I did a better job on it. There's a couple of things on this that I feel like I did a bit better than last time. First of all, the blood effect, I think, came out a lot nicer. I think the story of what's happening in this model is a lot better, but that's not the paint job. The armor and stuff is all super easy to do. It's all like really basic stuff like the leather and the armor and like bits of blood splattered everywhere. What I was really happy with on this one was how I did the cloak, because I tried to make it dirty, like he had been walking in filth and muck and mud and everything, and he picked up a lot of dirt as he was walking and just never cleaned it off, because why would he? And I really like the sort of transition I got on this. It's not perfect. There's a couple of bits now that I'm looking at it, I'm like, yeah, I could tidy that up a little bit. But again, learning, progress, it all changes as you're going along. But this was also one that I tried really hard to do better skin on. And it's not, skin is my weak point. I'm not good at doing skin, especially for like realistic people. If it's skin on a monster, I feel like that's easier because they don't have features that you will identify as easily. When a face is off on a person, you can tell immediately. It just looks wrong. I think I would have gone maybe a little lighter with it or blended it a little better, but overall, I really like what I did with this. You can notice that I didn't do a pupil on his eye because eyes are one of those things that if you get them wrong, it fucks everything up. Most times it's better to leave the eyes blank or just as a white dot, because if you start adding pupils and irises and everything, it can start looking like googly eyes really quickly. And again, I'm not comfortable doing them yet. My brush control is not there yet, but I will get there eventually. You'll see some of the progress in some of these other models as I bring them in. But this one, I feel like was a good start to other things I was doing. I'm really proud of a lot of the stuff I did on this. There's mistakes everywhere on all of these. You probably wouldn't notice them if you were sitting down to look at them yourself, especially if you don't paint. You would look at this and go like, wow, that's amazing. And I'm very proud of this model. But there's a couple of things that If I was a little better, I would change. Like I would blend the ground a bit better. I would blend the skin a bit better. There's a couple of places where I overpainted and just never went back to fix them because I got lazy. If any of you can relate to this, when you're at the end of a paint project, you're like, I just want this to be over with because I'm so close to a finished product. And then when it's done, you never think about it ever again. That's this. I'm gonna try and go in progression of things that I have done. The next one I am very proud of, which is this Fulgrim model from Warhammer. Fulgrim is the leader of the Emperor's Children, Slaanesh, all this stuff if you're into the lore. Really cool model. I really liked this one and I bought it and was kind of scared to start painting it because all of this like snake body element, I was really worried about messing up and getting wrong. And now it's the thing that I'm most proud of on this model. I think it looks absolutely sick. Again, always stuff you can improve, always transitions you can make better. I'm not good at learning how to use glazes and filters to kind of like blend layers. There's also like bits of his skin around here, around the back that went really, I didn't base him. I just realized that I left the base blank because I don't really know what to put on it. Eventually I can base it later. This was one of the models that broke. So his head came off and his wings came off and I re-glued them, but it broke in such a way that there's transitions that look kind of shitty now. Like the seam at his neck looks just awful now that I'm looking at it and I'm like, whatever, it's done. I'm surprised it's even salvageable at all. But there's a lot of techniques that went into this that I learned as I went. I also just realized that there's unfinished bits on him, like the rings on his stomach. I followed a tutorial on this one because I was uncomfortable picking my own colors for this and I didn't really know how to start. Who did I follow? I think is it the painting coach? Lloyd from the painting coach uploaded a tutorial on how to paint this 5 months ago and that was the one that I felt like most matched my abilities. I watched another one from the Warhammer page themselves, but they were using contrast paints to do the skin. I hate contrast paints. I know there's a lot of you out there that probably love them and are really good with them. They have a very specific use case. I absolutely despise them. They stain really quickly. They're hard to work with. I don't have the technique to use them to blend them properly yet, so I would rather just use straight acrylics like base coats, but using contrast paints has never worked well for me. They always look bad whenever I try them. So I started that using contrast paints on the skin and like bits of this body. And I really hated how it turned out to the point where I almost threw out the model. And I was thinking about doing that and just buying a new one. I know, flex, right? And just starting again. But then I saw the painting coaches one and I was like, I much prefer this method of doing it. I'm not about speed. I'm not trying to speed up the process. And that's usually what contrast paints are for, is painting entire armies quickly. I decided I'm gonna do that one. So I put this in isopropyl alcohol and over like an entire day, dipping him, scrubbing it off, dipping him, scrubbing it off. I finally got all the paint off and started again, and I'm very proud of how this turned out. Again, there's a lot of techniques in this that I don't normally do, like this snake body specifically, the way all the lines are done to try and get that sort of like snaky effect. To the effect of that, I did it for another model that I'll show you in a minute, and I hated how it turned out. Like, it only worked on this one for now. But there's other elements of this that as I was painting it, I got really scared, because when you're doing anything that changes the color value of a base paint too much, like there's a huge contrast instead of building up layers, it tends to make you scared because you're like, oh God, I've ruined it. I've gone too far too quickly. But thankfully this one worked out. And I even put like, I didn't do like the gems the way other people with better techniques would do them. I just kind of colored them, put a slightly brighter color over one half of it to make it seem like it's two-tone, and then just put a gloss varnish over it. So when the light catches it, it actually looks shiny, which I think worked out really well. But again, gems were something that I'd never done before, so this was a first attempt at that. But I really like this. I put this up in an Instagram post and somebody said I had the pristine Fulgrim figure. And somebody asked where they could buy Fulgrim like this because their boyfriend really liked it. And I was like, that's really sweet because I painted this, and the fact that you think it's good enough means that I did a good job. So I'm happy with that. Then next we move on to airbrushing. I bought an airbrush years ago, I think like 2 years ago by now, and I started using it and I fucking hated it. Because I tried it out. It was a really cheap one. It was like, I don't know how much, it was like £40 or something. It was like an Amazon Basics kind of one to try and practice with. And I had it, I had no idea how to thin paints. Turns out the airbrush was just really bad because I was using really thin paint. I had no idea about needle size and nozzle types and anything like that. So I just got that. I tried it. It clogged 4 times in one session. And I was like, I can't do this. I hate it. I don't like airbrushing. The paint was too thin and it all spread everywhere. So I eventually bought an Iwata Eclipse airbrush that was highly recommended online, which, by the way, I fucking love this thing. It's incredible. Got the quick release. Oh, yeah. Oh, I just use another airbrush now? Cool, sick. That's fun. It's so much fun to play around with. I got that one then and I was scared of using it because it's like using crappy paintbrushes for a while and then being like, oh, I got really nice, like proper, like sable hair paintbrushes and I'm afraid to use them because I don't know if my technique's good and I might ruin the brush. The bottom line is you don't really know that you're gonna be bad at it unless you start using it and then you have to fuck up a whole bunch of times and then you get better at it. Thankfully, the Iwata Eclipse airbrush is so good that the mistakes that I was making with the first one kind of righted themselves already because the manufacturing of this thing was so much better. I still made a lot of mistakes trying to use it, and it's a 0.4 millimeter needle size, so that sprays way wider than what I was anticipating. So I started using that to try other things. And one of the first things I was trying was a tutorial that I had saved on my laptop like a year prior from a YouTuber named Ninjon, who's a great YouTuber for Warhammer mini painting. And it was about painting a Tyranid with wings. I can't even remember what these are called. I'm so sorry. I don't like Tyranids. And it was to try and use an airbrush to get a specific look on that, to kind of have like a darker, grimdark xenomorph look, which I ended up with these, which, by the way, are not finished. I started painting these. I was using the airbrush to try and get like transitions and things on the wings and everything. And I even did 2 of them because I was like, I'll try this on both to see if this goes a different way at all. One of them's better than the other. They're not finished. The bases aren't colored. I didn't finish them off because I didn't really like how they were turning out. And again, if any of you know this, you start moving on to a different model immediately and you're like, that one didn't turn out the way I wanted. I'm leaving this. But there was a lot of good lessons in this. There was good stuff because there was stuff with like AK streaking grime that I was using to try and get different stuff. I had never used stuff like that where you put it on and then you can use mineral spirits to wipe it off. And I had never tried that before. I think I have it here. This stuff, which stains like a motherfucker. It's an enamel product. Again, a lot of you who watch me who don't paint probably have no idea what's going on, but this, I'm sorry, there's a lot of information to take over. And my brain just hops from one thing to the next. But you put it on and then you can use mineral spirits to wipe it off, or you can get a Q-tip and wipe it off yourself as you're going. I didn't do that well on the first one, which was this. So everything ended up being stained like really heavily, which I didn't really like the backs of the wings don't really have much of a gradient. It has a look to it for sure. It kind of has that like really dirty, grimy, and a lot of times I don't really like how Warhammer stuff is box art painted because I think it's too nice, it's too clean, it's too saturated, it's too vibrant. I really like staining stuff up and weathering it and making it get closer to realism, but I'm not good at doing that, so I'm trying my best to kind of like learn these techniques to figure it out. So I'm learning about enamel washes, I'm learning about oil washes, taking stuff off with like methylated spirits or white spirits or mineral spirits. So it's been a really fun learning task. So each thing that I'm painting, and I genuinely feel like each thing that I'm painting, I'm learning a new technique. I'm learning something new. Airbrushing, enamel washes, and all of this stuff is forming a much better painter, which you will start seeing in some of these next things that I've been painting. So the Tyranids didn't really work out. I might finish them off at some point. I'm not sure, but again, they're not failures, they're just lessons that I've learned from. And I'm trying to remember this for myself because there's a lot of stuff that's not painting that I will not try, like writing and directing and filmmaking, and not writing for like movies and stuff, but like writing in general. All these things that I'm like, I want to try these things someday, but I hold myself back because I'm like, it has to be good. It's becoming a problem that I realize being a person of influence. I think that's why I like painting so much, so I can show you like the best of the best. You don't see all the mistakes and the failures because I get to fail on my own in the dark. People always talk about failure as such a good tool for success because you have to fail before you get better at it. But in my case, and this is gonna sound so fucking stupid, I feel like I can't really fail much anymore because a lot of the stuff I'm doing is so public, like especially with YouTube videos and things I'm doing there, because if I fail, there's so many more people watching what I fail that it makes it scary to do. Like I'm so much better at failing in my own time and then being like, that didn't really work, throw it out or try again, or you know, like the Fulgrim model, dipping it and scrubbing off the paint and trying again and going again, and if it doesn't work out, no one has to see it, it's just for me. I learned from my mistakes, I moved on. But if it's other stuff that I'm doing for like a YouTube video, I can't really like fail as much, or at least maybe that's a mental barrier I've made up for myself, that I feel like I can't fail because I'm not in the dark doing it. I'm not failing on my own. I'm failing in front of all these people with a fucking spotlight on me. And when it fails, then it fails so much more spectacularly, and I'm very sensitive to that idea of failure. I know failure is like a thing you need to go through to succeed, and these are all evidence of that, but I can't tell my brain that in other circumstances until I do it. It's a hard thing to kind of like get around. It's that perfectionism of the ADHD in me that I'm like, I can't wrestle with that yet, and I'm it's so weird. I'm like 35 and I'm not even old, but I feel like I'm running out of time. It's something that I'm working on, and I'm hoping that this thing will get better. And part of me making this video is also to be like, hey, I'm sharing this with you, but I'm not showing you the process because I want to be able to fail on my own, but then show you guys a finished product and maybe trigger some like dopamine receptors in my brain. I don't know. My brain doesn't work how I thought it would. Anyway, moving on to the next thing. Yeah, I painted this one first. This is a Saturnine Dreadnought from Warhammer, which I'm not usually a fan of painting the mechanical side of things in Warhammer, but this was a really good excuse to bust out the airbrush. So this is my second attempt on an airbrush, which I'm gonna toot my own horn and say this is a really fucking good second attempt with an airbrush because I really took my time. I watched a lot of videos on it. I really tried different techniques and didn't try anything too crazy, but just went far enough outside my comfort zone to really kind of like poke at myself a little bit. And I followed, this is another tutorial that I followed from the Grimdark Compendium, which is also one of my favorite YouTube channels for painting stuff, because again, they have that grimy, dirty, more realistic in the eldritch, dirty, dark fantasy element that I really like. That's just my aesthetic. It's all personal preference whenever it comes to what art styles you like. But I didn't follow them fully because they painted this to be, is it the salamanders that the box art has? It has these like crackled leopard print fire sort of effect on these parts. I'm just going to come out and say it, it's fuck ugly. I hate it. I love Warhammer stuff. I love the lore. I've been reading so much of the Horus Heresy books. I'm like 8 books in now, 7 books. I read the first 4 up to Flight of the Eisenstein. I skipped Fulgrim, went on to Legion. Then I read Thousand Sons, and I just finished, 2 days ago, I just finished the first Heretic. And that's the thing with the Horus Heresy, you can kind of like pick and choose which factions you like. I didn't read Prospero Burns. A lot of you are probably going to say that it's amazing. I really don't like the Space Wolves. Is it Space Wolves? The fucking Viking guys. I hate them. I think they're so boring to me. I also hate Ultramarines. Right now I started reading No Fear, and I don't really like the writing style in it. And it's Dan Abnett, and I really like Dan Abnett, and I want to read it, but the way it's written in like, it's almost like little computer documents, I don't like, it's not gelling with me at all. But I'm getting off on tangents. Some of the stuff in Warhammer I think is the sickest shit ever. Black Templars, I love those guys. There's some Blood Angel stuff like Sanguinius, fucking sick. Some stuff looks incredible, and then you have other stuff that looks so awful in my mind. Some people probably love it, but there's some factions or like mix match stuff where it has this like checkerboard pattern on it, and it basically looks like NASCAR racing stripes on some of these Space Marines. And some of the patterns just look really, really ugly to me. They don't blend well. It feels like a really 80s aesthetic, which it probably is. And some people are really into it, but I personally think it looks really fucking god awful. So on this, the Saturnine Dreadnought, I think it's salamanders. I'm sorry, I'm not well versed on a lot of the legions, but this like fiery crackle pattern that was on this, it's a cool thing to learn how to paint. But in terms of how it blends with the rest of the model, I think it looks really ugly. And I didn't want to do it, so I just wanted to do this sort of like green, and I was really proud of the sort of gradient I got on this. I'm not a huge fan of the weathering I did on this. I tried to do like streaky marks on some of it here. And I tried to do like leaky with the streaking grime, like rusty stuff. I probably should have used some oil paints to streak down that. I tried to do a glow effect around the weapon. It didn't really turn out. I did streaking grime all over it and then I wiped it all off. So on the back, you can see is like really dark and dirty. I'm so sorry if you can't see this in the video, but it ended up like really dark and dirty, and it's a vibe for sure, but I didn't go back in to touch anything up, which I probably could have done and should have done. So some elements of it didn't really go the way I wanted to. But in terms of techniques used, the airbrush, this was my practice model fully for the airbrush. Like my first full finished airbrush model is this one. And I really like how it turned out, and I'm really proud of a lot of parts of it. Like I even took like a metal piece and I heated it up and melted it. And there's like bullet hole things here, and I filled them with a silver, or like silvered around it to make it look like something actually like punched into the metal and melted it and buckled it out. Some of them didn't really work out, and that's another part of the weathering that I'm learning to do. I was following a thing about sponging weathering on, and I think I went overboard, which I tend to do. A lot of people go very overboard, I feel. Again, this is all personal preference aesthetic. When I'm looking at some models, I feel like some people go way overboard with the sponge chipping, and it can go from like realistic to just catches your eye a bit too much too quickly. I think I did that with this model. All learning, all new techniques, all stuff that I was trying to figure out as I was going. So in terms of a finished model, there's a lot that I wish was better on it, but I think it looks really cool. Also the base, I got these new like rubberized sort of like tree bits, and I had this old wooden, or this old like tree stump that I was like, I'm gonna use that for this model to try and like sell the scale of this thing, that it's big and it knocked down a tree and it was moving through. I don't think that story came across in the base. Again, I went a little overboard trying to cover up some mistakes with it. All techniques, all a learning thing. I can look at any of these and go like, oh God, that's so messy, and that could have been better, and this could have been neater, and this technique didn't really work out. But that would be defeating. I would just never paint anything ever again then. So a lot of this stuff I'm very proud of, despite the fact that I know there's mistakes on it and I can get better, which is the whole point. Now we come to the good shit. This is the stuff that I feel I have 3 of them, and I feel like they're the best things that I have ever painted. And if I showed these to myself a year ago, I'd be like, fuck off. No way I painted that. You're joking. You're joking. The first one, you might remember last time I said I had a Godfrey model with Siraj on his back that I was going to paint. Started it, fucking hated it. It all came out ugly. One of the arms broke trying to move something around, so I just threw the whole thing out. I was not happy with it. I realized there's so much gold armor on him that it all blended together. It wasn't a fun thing. Siraj is supposed to be this like ghost, so everything ended up just being like a white ghosty sort of look, so it was just really boring to look at, so I didn't like it. But I did have a Mesmer model that I had planned on painting, and I finally did it. This thing is massive, by the way, and I really wanted to challenge myself and up at the scale, and I was like, you know what, now I'm comfortable enough with an airbrush. This is where an airbrush really starts to show its worth, because these bigger models, if you're trying to do them with a brush, first of all, it's going to take you forever. You're going to use so much paint. An airbrush is so good at covering massive amounts of stuff, but especially large flat areas, because when you start painting it, you start noticing all the brush strokes if it's too large a pattern. But some of the stuff like the cloak came out so well. I fucking love how this turned out. This is one that I said there was a couple of techniques in it that I tried that didn't really work. There was a lot of stuff with masking putty for airbrushing parts of it. There was a lot of overspray. I had to fix a lot of mistakes. I was also trying to up my game with skin, and I think I did a decent job, but again, it's not really at the skin level that I want to be at, but it's good enough that I can't really complain. They also made it so that both his eyes were open. I forgot that he has like one eye closed most of the time, which is a very berserk thing that FromSoft tend to do. So he had both eyes open, and I ended up painting both, and I was like, I don't really like that I painted both. And I also didn't really try and do pupils. I just left one of them kind of like yellow, because he's supposed to have Marika's scar seal in it for him, because he pulls it out and then there's an abyssal serpent inside his eye that's been kept away. He actually wasn't not that complex. There was a lot of stuff that went into this that just, it took a lot of time because it was a massive piece, but there was some good shit that I learned out of this from other people, which is that his helmet is metallic, and normally I would just paint all of this a metallic color and then put a wash over it to get into the recesses and kind of dull it down, and then dry brush over it to kind of get that weathery metallic look. I didn't do any of that for this one. I ended up painting this, I think it was Incubi Darkness or Dark Reaper from Two Thin Coats. It was like a dark grayish, greenish black. And then I was like, that looks wrong. And then I dry brushed metal over it. And I was like, that's it, it's done. That was so easy. I'd never done that before, and that was like a really cool technique to learn for fast metallics. This bracelet is like a gold. And normally, again, I would paint this a dark gold, put a wash all over it. Then I would just highlight it up with a brighter gold. And then this time, a technique was to use a sort of jade green under it and then put gold over that. And I was like, how does that work? Color theory is fucking nuts. There's some stuff with like the snake's eyes that I tried to paint them up properly and then put a gloss over them to try and catch that shine. And they're so tiny and you wouldn't think it would actually make that much of a difference, but they actually do catch the light a lot. Again, the eyes, yeah, I could have spent a little more time on it, but my brush control is pretty bad when you get to really like microscopic detail, which is why I'm so bad at eyes. Despite how big this model is, it's still really hard to do the eyes on it because they're so fucking tiny. But I did the eyes on these and then put a little gloss over them, and now I'm like, when you tilt the model around, sometimes the light catches the eyes and your eyes are like drawn to them. It's a really cool effect. I probably should have done it on, probably should do it on every eyeball that I'm doing for now, but you can get a bit overzealous with it and kind of ruin it. The snakes were one of the things I was like, it worked on Fulgrim's body if I'm doing snakes like that. And I tried to do that technique across their body and I had like all the lines and I looked at it and I was like, that looks pretty shit. It wasn't giving that sort of like creasy, snaky skin vibe. I think because this is 3D printed and it's all flat. So this skin part underneath, I feel like I could have done better because I feel like there's a way of blending these transitions more. But again, I also get to a point on some models that once it looks good enough and I'm happy with it, I'm like, don't touch it. Don't go further because you can just keep pushing details as far as you want, but then you get to a point where suddenly it's like, now I've ruined it. It's too much. I should just quit while I'm ahead and not fuck anything up. And then I had the whole thing done and I took pictures of it and I realized I didn't do any of the yellow trim around this. So then I had to spend an hour doing that. And you know what? It was worth it because it came out really well. His weapon was a lot easier than I expected it to be. I just realized that I painted these gems on it and then put gloss varnish on them, but then I matte varnished the entire model because I found Ultra Matte Varnish by AK Interactive is really nice. I used a matte varnish before that made everything kind of like satin and I hated it. Turns out it was a satin varnish, but the Ultra Matte Varnish protects all the paint and now I can touch it and it's not going to rub off after a while, which older models did. And I'm really, really fucking proud of this model. I think it came out really well. I keep saying these next three, I'm like, if I ordered, apart from the eyes are the only thing and the lips are the only part where I'm like, they could be a bit better. But I realize now that I have to go back in with gloss varnish and tighten up a few spots to make them shine. I kept saying if I ordered Shadow of the Erdtree and this came in the collector's edition, I'd be pretty happy with it. Like a hand-painted model like this, I think it came out really well. There's a couple of, it also makes you really appreciate the design of some of these characters when it's done. Like the intricacy of the snakes in this model, first of all, is insane. There's a part of it that is supposed to go behind his arm, but it wasn't fitting because it was 3D printed kind of wonky. So I just broke it and I was like, you can't even tell that it's missing. I painted this as is. I shouldn't have done that. I just got so keen on building him that I didn't do it in sub-assemblies. I should not have done that because I painted the entire thing as is. That's fucking stupid. That makes things a million times harder because you end up catching other things with brushes and you end up having to get into tiny details that you can't normally. And if I ever did it again, I would take my time, build it in sub-assemblies. I would do it a million times different, but that's the learning process. I'm really glad with how the cape turned out. I think some elements of it probably could be done a little differently. This was just straight dry brushing. I do want to try a cape this big with an airbrush and like make it all bright first and then airbrush in shadows, like highlights, lowlights. Is that the opposite of it? Paint in some lowlights to kind of like catch the shadows a bit more. I'm really excited to try out the airbrush more because lighting is my favorite thing. I'm realizing just kind of in life. I love good lighting anywhere. I want to get to a point where I paint a model and maybe in like a couple of years I'll have a channel or a video on this channel where I've painted a model with realistic lighting. A lot of models don't have realistic lighting. They all talk about like a tabletop scenario where the light's up here and you zenithal prime them and the light's catching all the stuff coming straight down. But I want to try a model at some point where I have like a light coming up and it's like glowing up like it's lava underneath them, and I start using the airbrush for like transparent inks to make a glow effect and that kind of stuff. That's my next sort of technique that I want to try and master and accomplish. But also skin is something that I'm really working heavily on. But again, all a learning practice, and it was really, really fun to do. It took me about 2 weeks to paint this on and off, but it was very fun to do. The next one I did, I'm going to show off this one next because this is, if I show this off last, it's going to make everything look crap. It's a little Hollow Knight. And he's so cute and I love him so much. There's a base that came with him, but I was like, I had a Hollow Knight figure before that I like touched up because it got a little damaged in transit and I was using paints to do that. I was like, I have an airbrush now and I can do a really, this is what the airbrush is really good for, is these sort of base coats that are all completely even. If I was to do this with a brush, it would have taken forever and it would have looked bad. But he's such a simple paint scheme. I feel like he's actually a pretty good model to learn techniques on for beginners. Cloak didn't really look the way I wanted to, that I'm noticing, because I tried to dry brush it because I got lazy and didn't want to hand do all the little things. But I thought he was cute and I literally did this morning, so I wanted to put him in. This next one, again, we're getting quite large with some of these models because I had this model, I would say, for probably around 8 months before I even tackled it. I bought it while I was playing Tears of the Kingdom and I wanted to finish it off and I just never got into it because I knew it was going to be difficult. I knew my skills were not ready for it. So I spent some time learning some stuff. So I painted this Link model. This lighting is awful to try and show it off. From Tears of the Kingdom. And this one I did in sub-assembly. So I did the base first. I did his body. I did his head separate, because I wanted to try and get the skin right instead of working around the body. And then the glider was last. And I'm really, really proud of how this came out because there's lots of mistakes everywhere. Some of the line work on his cape, like these fine white lines, and on his thing here, if you look really close at it, you can kind of see the mistakes. And I could probably tighten it up and clean it up. The way this was going, I was like, oh no, this is not going to turn out good. I don't know what I'm doing. And I did the base first, and I was so proud of how that turned out because, again, I used a lot of foliage that I had lying around. I really liked these sort of, I think they're from Army Painter or just Green Stuff World or something, I don't know. There's a whole bunch of different companies that do them, but I did these because I was like, I really like the colors in them and it's nice and vibrant. And this was one of the ones where I was like, Zelda is vibrant. Zelda is like really bright and colorful, and Tears of the Kingdom is very bloomed out, so it's hard to get an accurate depiction of what the colors are, but I was using a lot of references for these. Didn't follow any tutorials for these or the Mesmer one. I sat down, got like 6 or 7 reference images for different things, picked my own colors, which I'm always really scared of doing. I think it's my weakest part of painting, is trying to figure out what color shadows should be, so I just keep to the basics. But I really, really like how this came out. I used static grass. I bought a static grass applicator that I've had for a while, and I finally used it on this. It didn't really come out the way I wanted, but it looked cool. His pants, I'm really proud of the way they turned out. His face doesn't look the best because he is a very stylized, cartoony, super big anime eye look. So I tried to keep to some real basic eye techniques. That was the only tutorial I followed. It makes him look a bit goofy. It makes him look a bit too human, a bit too serious. It's kind of like Uncanny Valley a little bit. Like, it doesn't look right. It doesn't fit what Link is, but it's good enough. It doesn't look bad, at least I don't think, compared to what I've tried some eyes before that looked fucking awful and they looked like googly eyes and it didn't work. But something that I'm really proud of on this is the hair, because I tried to follow like a blonde hair reference picture. And blonde hair is very nuanced. It's very complex. It's not just yellow. But I was like, he's sort of like an elvish character. He's sort of like an elf in game. So his hair is a bit more colorful and stylized. So it is basically yellow. And I kind of got this sort of cel-shaded cartoony look going on, which I really like. I think it looks really good. And skin was another one that I tried to follow some techniques that I had learned before. They weren't really working out. They started to make him look a bit bad and a bit, not to be sort of insensitive about it, but a bit jaundiced. Like his face just didn't look like I had envisioned in my head. So I ended up going with stuff really basic. His lips could be a bit better. But again, the fact that it doesn't look really glaringly awful, I think is a success. And then there's some elements on the glider that I oversprayed with the airbrush, but this took me so fucking long to do that I just wanted the end in sight. I had tried so many times of masking off the glider. I wanted to airbrush it. Paints were coming off. I didn't understand why. The resin wasn't taking the paint well. His quiver, I did really fast, you know. The Master Sword, I think, turned out really cool, but some parts of it are very rushed. Other parts I took a long time doing. The base probably I took the most meticulous thing because I really like doing landscape stuff. My goal is also, not only do I want to get good at doing realistic lighting, I want to do a diorama at some point. I've been watching a lot of people who make dioramas like North of the Border, Boyle Hobby Time, Studson Studios, like those kinds of people who make XPS foam bases that are rocky hills and you put something in, you add lights. That's where I want to get to. And I think that's on my bucket list for things that I want to try. In terms of how shit this looked as I was doing it, I am like blown away by how good this looked in the end. He's hard to do because again, he's not a human, but he is. So when something is wrong, you can kind of see it immediately. So that brings us to the next model, which is a Ganondorf model, which was a bit easier to do. Again, not to toot my own horn a bit too much, but I'm gonna fucking toot my own horn. It's my video talking about stuff that I'm proud of, so I'm gonna do it. I think this is probably the best thing I've ever painted, which is this Ganon model from Tears of the Kingdom. First of all, this model, it's really heavy for what it is. Compared to the other ones that I've had, like the Mesmer model is bigger, but this one is dense, which I love because it made everything feel really premium. Because his skin is green, I don't think he's this green in the game. I think it's a more muted, darker, sort of foresty green. I went with this because I really liked how punched up the colors were and the contrast of everything because his base is dark. I had so much fun painting this. It looks way more complex than it is. Like this was not as hard to do as some of the other ones. So it marries this perfect thing of like efficient painting methods that like you do a couple of little things, but it has a massive impact on how the model looks and makes it look incredible. And again, I was using a lot of reference images on this to try and make it my own, but also follow something that had a bit more groundedness in his model in the game. I'm just saying words at this point. There was some stuff like his cape here on one of the models that I'd seen on one of the reference pictures that had all these like purples and greens, and the underside of his robe here had all of these like really vibrant colors, and I was like, is that in the game? I actually still don't know if it's in the game. I decided not to do that because I knew it wouldn't look good if I did it. I knew where the model was going, that I was like, I don't like that. Plus I thought it was going to draw focus away from him. I really like that the focus right now comes up here. That's another thing I'm learning about models, is that if everything is vibrant and everything has the same attention to detail, like the Link model, it's fun to look at. And it's fun to go like, oh, look at this and all the little details everywhere. But in terms of telling like a silhouette and a story and like drawing your attention, I think this model is a bit better in that regard, because all of the brightest colors come up here and your eyes are drawn to that. And then you can look down at the base and go like, oh, cool. But the base is not what you're supposed to be looking at. His face is the focal feature. And that's what I'm noticing a lot with how models are posed. Warhammer models are really good at doing that, kind of like drawing your attention up to certain elements. And characters specifically, their face is kind of the whole point of them. Like you look at a person's face, you don't talk to them and look at their abs, even though he's crazy abs. But I really like how the skin came out on this, because I was using the same techniques, but because it's green, it ended up blending so much better. And I learned some of the techniques from doing the Great Unclean one that I did before, because that's also a green model. And again, I left his eyes dark. I wanted to paint his eyes, but his eyes were so tiny in this. I tried it at one point and I covered it up because I wanted to see what it looked like, just putting in some like off-white. It didn't look good. It just made him look wrong. Having his eyes be completely darkened and staying that way made him look a bit more sinister, and that's what I was going for. But I really like the way his face turned out, because I was using the same techniques that I used on the Link one, but again, because his face is green, they blended so much better, and this model had much harsher edges on his cheeks. He's a much more stylized villain character. He has a couple of gems on him that I painted glossy that turned out really cool. His hair, I'm really proud of. It came out really nice. I was a bit worried about going with like a pink in his hair, because his hair's red. And I was like, well, if I'm using a pink to highlight it, it might ruin it, but it didn't. It had the effect that I wanted. I used a contrast paint on the sword handle, which actually gave the exact effect I was looking for. And then the base I was worried about, because I didn't know how I was going to achieve a certain effect on these. Because his power in the game is kind of like a red blackish, but it kind of like morphs and it's kind of liquidy and it kind of has translucency and it has all these different like effects. I didn't pull it off. I didn't get the exact effect that I had in my brain. It's supposed to be a bit more two-tone. But what I did do was painted this all red, did the base coat, did a wash, did my highlights or my mid-tone and then my highlights the way I normally would. And then I covered everything in a black oil wash and then used mineral spirits and a Q-tip to kind of like take off the bits I wanted, because this effect, this power is kind of smoky. And I think that helped to achieve that effect. First time I ever did it, I loved doing it. I loved learning it. I used it as a wash on the entire base for these little like red eye things. I wanted to kind of go with a glow, but I didn't really know how to get it. It might have dulled the colors a little bit, but again, this isn't the focal point. This is the focal point. So I left it as is. But in terms of using oils as washes, I learned a lot in that regard. They're really messy, at least the way I was using them, and I don't think I thinned it enough. But in terms of the technique and the lessons learned and everything like that, great learning experience. So I think this is kind of like a culmination of everything. There's a contrast paint in here. There's the basic like base coat, wash, re-establish colors, mid-tone highlights. There's dry brushing all over this. There's staining on certain things. There's gloss varnishes. There's matte varnishes. There's oil washes. There's airbrushing to speed up the stuff. Like at the base coat for his skin and his clothing was all airbrushed. So I think this incorporates every technique that I've learned up until this point. And that's why I think this is the best model that I've ever done. And I'm very, very proud of it. I think it came out really well. So yeah. Anyway, thank you for enjoying Jacksepticeye's rambling hyperfixation hour. I just like talking about my painting hobby. And I like that it's a hobby. I like that it's for me and I can show off the final product, but I don't have to like paint in front of people because then I wouldn't enjoy it as much. So this way I get the best of both worlds and it's so fun to do and I'm having a great time doing it, to the point where it's the most fun thing that I do in my life right now, because it makes me feel artistic and it's getting that energy out of me and it's great. And I don't have to worry about an algorithm or anything like that. I just do it and it's fun to look at and I get to have fun with my models. All these models that I've painted, by the way, that aren't like Warhammer, I just got off Etsy. I don't think any of them are available now, because sometimes they'll have reference pictures on the Etsy page to be like, here's the colors we chose, and I'll bookmark it and then I'll go back and they're all gone. Like the Link, Ganon and Mesmer models I got off Etsy and now they're all gone off Etsy because I think the copyright police come after them. It's like Flame Lord and I don't know, elvish twink boy. I don't know what they're labeled as, but it's never like malevolent lord, I think was Ganondorf, but it's never what it's supposed to be because they're like, it's not this, it's not copyright. And then they get hammered by the copyright police, which, I mean, fair enough. I'm painting them just for my own thing. I'm not making any money off them. Those are the people selling them illegally. I'm not doing anything illegal by buying them and painting them for myself, for my own personal use. Leave me alone. I don't really know what's next. I think I have another Mesmer model on the way with a different pose because I want to take the techniques I learned with that one and try something else to see if I can make it a little different. He has a bit of fire on his base. I'm really excited to try fire effects with an airbrush. I think that's going to be fucking sick. I have a Vivi model that has him on a base and it's a bit bigger. I also ordered something else and I can't remember what it is. It's not another Guts model, don't worry. But I really like doing these like large 3D printed models. I think they're really cool to do. They're really, like I love painting Warhammer ones, but sometimes they're like teeny tiny little models. I'm not playing the game and I don't want to, like it's not a goal of mine. So I'm like, I want a bigger model. I want like a display piece. I'm interested in trying out diorama stuff eventually. I don't want to jump into it immediately and like buy so much grass and a base and XPS foam and PVA glue and all this stuff. But I did watch one that was like buying a model train and then putting that in a post-apocalyptic scenario from Boyle Hobby Time. And I was like, that's so cool. So maybe go to like an antique shop or a thrift shop and buy old models and rebase them and paint them myself so I don't have to like go with the old paint job. That sounds so fun to do, like repurposing old models from an antique store is really cool. And I went to Snooper's Paradise in Brighton and they have a bunch of old cool trains and old cool like little Star Wars models and stuff. And I'm like, oh, I could buy these and paint over them again. And that would be so cool to do. But that's kind of it for now. I love my airbrush so much. I did buy some other ones that are a 0.2 millimeter nozzle, which for like really fine detail to get in. I was really excited to try that. I don't know if it's the airbrushes I bought. I bought one from Gallery, the brand that do them. I bought one from Harder and Steenbeck. And I tried those and 0.2 nozzle is so fucking hard to figure out. It never operates the same way. The Iwata Eclipse one, I just start spraying and I can like feather it so lightly and get what I want out of it. I'm like, it kind of does everything. And then the other ones I bought, they're a lot harder to kind of like push paint out of. And I'm like, does it need to be thinner? Does the pressure need to be higher? I've tried all these different variables, but it never really works and they clog easier. And I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe you guys in the comments will have some advice on it. I don't know. But anyway, that's going to do it for now. I'll be back with another video eventually with a whole bunch of other models that I've painted. Maybe they'll be even better. Hopefully I'm learning as I go and I haven't plateaued. And then I'm doing dioramas with lights in them and everything. It's so cool. I can't wait to sink my teeth into it. It's going to be so fun. But that's a video for another time. Thank you for watching this one. Okay, bye-bye now.